Hello everyone, welcome to UK Education Briefing for Education Agents and Counselors in Europe webinar today. My name is Semra Yalçın Doğan. I work for the British Council based in Turkey. We have brought together distinguished panelists from BUILA, which stands for the British Universities International Liaison Associations, UK Visas and Immigration, our online training provider Edified, and Ucas. Before we start, let me give you some brief information about the British Council. We are the United Kingdom's international organization for cultural relations and education opportunities, working with over 100 countries globally. This event is our chance to engage with the education agents and counselors, and there will be many other engagement activities we will deliver in the coming months. The session will last for 1 hour, 30 minutes. Just to outline the program, in the first part, we'll start with BUILA session, followed by the British Council and Q&A session. In the second part, we will have Ucas, UKVI, and Q&A session. Please note that the first part is more relevant to the agents. If there are any school counselors joining us now, you are more than welcome to stay throughout the webinar. The microphones are muted, so feel free to write your questions into the Q&A section. We'll do our best to answer all of them at the end of each part. Let me thank you, our partners, for joining us today. Thank you all. Now I'd like to give the floor to Philippa Collins Robson from BUILA to introduce herself. Philippa, welcome, and the floor is yours. You are on mute.
Oh, okay. Mute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, when I went to presentation, it wouldn't let me speak. Just so we might have that problem again. Just thank you to everybody for coming today, and really looking forward.
Philippa? Philippa, are you there? Can you hear me? Oh, I think it is to do with my internet. I'm in the office. I'm really sorry. Philippa, are you there?
Semra, we can hear you clearly. Perhaps myself and Chris could begin and talk about the training while we have all of our attendees on the line, and then when Philippa's back, she can jump in if that's okay.
I think Philippa is having an issue with her internet or camera. I'm not sure. Okay, Helen. Now, sorry about that. Helen from the British Council and Chris Davis from Edified, our training provider, will talk about the training that we will launch soon. Helen and Chris, over to you.
Thanks so much, Semra, and hello to everyone on the line. Thanks for all giving your time today to join us. for those I haven't met before, and there'll be many of you, I know we have people from wider Europe on the call as well. I'm Helen Etheridge, and I head up the Higher Education and Science team for the EU region at the British Council. So that covers all EU and EEA countries. And I'm going to speak just for a few moments now, along with Chris, to introduce a bit about the British Council's work in the agent and counsellor space, and in particular the training which we are launching very, very soon at the beginning of October. So maybe I'll carry on, and then I'm sure Chris can introduce himself in a sec when he comes in. But to begin with, I just wanted to emphasise really how very, very important education agents and school councils are for the British Council, and all the work that we do in the whole of the Europe region, so EU and wider Europe, to attract international students to come and study in the UK. Now, I'm sure Philippa will come on in a moment and talk about the work, but BUILA and UKVI did conduct a large-scale piece of research to explore what we can offer to agents and counsellors. And in response to this research, the British Council is implementing a more focused programme for agents and counsellors. So some of you will be aware that we did used to have a training, but the aims of this new revamped training are to improve the student experience through the support that's offered by agents and counsellors, to provide visibility for UK higher education providers and other organisations wanting to work with agents, and provide support to schools with in-house counsellors who need regular professional development around the UK as a study destination. So our offer to both agents and counsellors will cover 4 areas in particular, and these are on the screen. These will include training and assessments, such as the training we're talking about today, which is an online training, but it will be complemented by other in-person CPD sessions, certainly in certain EU countries. Also communications and toolkits, so to support agent and counsellor engagement with prospective students. These come from our Study UK campaign. We also run events and webinars, such as today, on all things around studying in the UK, and research and insights as well, which will help you in doing your jobs with the students. And this slide here says "we heard you." So as I said, there was this research that was carried out, and international education agents that took part in the research did give feedback that the training that we had before was a little too expensive. Some thought it was time consuming and not always appropriate for more senior counsellors or agents with more experience who've been in the job a bit longer. So we also understand that the training and the certificate that came with it were highly valued in a lot of markets. So considering all of this, we are going to roll out free agents training, so the British Council Education Agent and Counsellor Training Suite for agents and school counsellors, and this is beginning at the beginning of October. So from around the 5th of October, this will go live. So I'm going to stop there a moment and hand over to Chris to take us through some of the details of the training. So Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Helen. Good afternoon, everybody. Really nice to be talking to you all. So my name's Chris, and I work for an education consultancy company called Edified. And over the last year and a half, we've been working really closely with BUILA and the British Council and UKVI to develop an agent framework, an agent quality framework, which Philippa will talk about a bit more in a minute. And one of, as Helen alluded to, one of the key recommendations that came out of that was a revamping, a redevelopment of the British Council agent training programme. So as Helen said, we did some initial research, some workshops, some scoping, which included some great feedback from agents and counsellors from all over the world, which has helped us to redesign the way the training looks now. So some of the real key impacts that came back from your feedback is that we have redesigned the course. So we've moved it away from the old style of having 3 different levels of training. So you had to complete level 1, then you go on to level 2 and level 3. That's all been taken out, and we have now redesigned it so it's in thematic areas. So it's all now structured by subject, and you have core subject areas for different modules. So there'll be one unit that just covers visas and immigration for everybody. There'll be one unit that covers key reasons to study in the UK for everybody. All done now by subject, which is great. What that has helped us do is helped us reduce some of the duplication which occurred across the different levels. So now the entire course has been reduced by approximately 25%. So it should take you 25% less time to complete the training than it would have done previously. Also, based on your feedback, it's now possible for you to study the content in any order you like. So you don't have to start with module 1, unit 1 and go to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 all the way through in sequence. You can pick and choose which areas you want to study at which time, and it will automatically save your process. So if you've got a spare hour that you want to dedicate to learning about visas and immigration, you can just go and do that, finish it, save your progress, and then if you want to go back to another topic later on, you can do that as well. One of the really important bits of feedback that came across from you all was that actually some of the content wasn't relevant, but you knew it already. So you didn't feel the value in going through some of the basic level content just to get to the assessment when you knew that stuff already. So what you'll be able to do now in the new training is if there are areas which you are very confident in your knowledge already, you can skip straight to the assessment. You don't have to work your way through every page of the content. You can go straight to the assessment, take the assessment, and if you pass that at the required level, tick, you're done for that module. So it gives you the option to assess yourself immediately on topics that you're really, really clear on. Obviously, with every sort of online system nowadays, it has been tested for mobile usage and mobile optimization. So you will be able to take the course and it will be optimized for use on mobiles and tablets. And one thing which I'm sure will make everybody very happy is this version of the training and going forward is free of charge. So there is no registration fee, there is no recertification fee. It's free for everybody to use. So that's a real key change that we've got there. As previously, it will still lead to a British Council certification. So once you have completed all of the core subjects and once you've passed all of your assessments, you will receive British Council certification, and this will automatically sync up with the database that the British Council has on their website, which shows which councillors and which agencies have been certified to pass their training. So once you've passed, it will be visible to everybody to see that you have passed that course. As with all of the sort of quality assurance framework that Philip will talk about a bit more later, none of this is actually, we're not being prescriptive about any of this. We're not making universities do anything. We're not making agents do anything, but it is very likely that as contracts start to get renewed, the requirement for agents to have passed this training is likely to be required by UK providers. So like I say, that's not prescribed. Each different institution will have different ways of managing this, but from discussions we've had with institutions, it's likely that that's something that they will be requiring as part of their agreements with you as agents and counsellors. So that's what we've done so far, and that's what's going to be launched in the new training, which is to come out in October, as Helen said. Of course, that's not the end, so there's a number of other things that we're working on as well. We're continually working on the content, trying to move it away from the more text-based content that it has at the moment, bringing in more engaging multimedia, more videos, more interactive tools for you to use to make that learning a bit more fun and a bit more engaging. We're also developing a series of advanced units. So you have the core units which exist now. That's what you need to study. That's what you need to pass in order to become certified. But we're also going to develop a number of advanced optional units on certain subjects that people may wish to study if they want to, but not a requirement in order to get your certification. So we're going to develop subject-specific modules. So talking about how do you promote STEM subjects as an agent or a counsellor? How might you promote business subjects? We're bringing in regional specific modules. So reasons to study in Wales, reasons to study in Scotland, reasons to study in Northern Ireland. And also we're going to use that to bring in any updated content if there are real key policy changes or real, an absolute shift in something that's happening in the industry, then we can drop in an optional subject to cover that. So core content will be there for everybody. That's what you have to do to be certified, but there'll be a whole raft of optional additional specialist modules that you can take if you want to, or if your institutional partners feel like that's something that they would like you to do. Even though the course is free of charge, you will still need to demonstrate some annual engagement to maintain your certified status. So just by taking it once won't keep you certified for evermore. So we haven't sort of worked out the nuts and bolts of this yet, but there will be a requirement for agents and counsellors to somehow stay engaged with the training in order to maintain their status. And the other thing that another sort of big part of the project that we're working on is an education agent communications portal. So to support the rest of the framework and to support the training, we're developing a communications portal which will enable us to get key messages out to agents and counsellors really quickly, and enable sort of discussion forums and things like that. So that's another key piece of feedback the UK bus that we've worked on. Obviously, with any new launch, we've refreshed the look and feel of the training. So what this here just gives you a couple of screenshots, a very quick snapshot of what it's going to look like. So it's all really nicely branded, lots of big clickable buttons, like I said, optimized for mobile technology, lots more video content. It's going through our user testing at the moment, and all the feedback that we've had from people who've been using it is that actually the functionality and how it works has been really, really well received. Thanks. And so this just gives you, as I was talking about, an overview of the content which is currently included and will be included in the future. So the blue across the top, they are our core modules. So this is the content which everybody will need to learn, everybody will need to pass the assessment for in each of these particular modules, those thematic areas. So why study in the UK education system, visas and immigration, stuff like that. You need to pass each of those modules in order to get your training certification. In the green on the bottom half of the screen, this is what we haven't developed yet, but these are the optional specialist modules that I was talking about earlier on. So these are the subject areas that over time we're going to be adding into the training to give you the options to study them if you want to. So if your particular agency, if your particular skill set is around students going into schools, you know, there's going to be a particular module on independent schools. There'll be a particular module on further education colleges. If maybe your agency focuses only on sending students to Scotland, there's going to be a specific module on studying in Scotland. So that snapshot there gives you an overview of content at the top, the core content everyone needs to do, and then what we're looking to develop in terms of the optional modules.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Emma. Back to you, Helen, I think.
Thank you. And I just wanted to reiterate the reason that we're doing all of this, and the fact that we value so highly the work of agents and counsellors. And of course, it works for all of us to have a high quality service delivered for students looking to come to the UK. So that is there as one of our main reasons. But the agent training is designed for education advisors by the British Council as well to increase their capacity to promote UK education. So of course, it's there for you as a CPD opportunity as well, should it be required. And it's designed to promote and reward ethical and professional behaviour and to improve the quality of agents by providing a British Council professional development route. And finally, the benefits to you, the benefits to agents in joining the training. Certification aims to confer on those who are suitably trained and experienced the British Council trained agent status that Chris alluded to. And the benefits really are having international recognition of having achieved a high standard of excellence, the listing of details on the publicly available British Council trained agent list, which is being developed, and the certificate that you're able to display as well. And we are looking at whether we may be able to use a logo or a badge, which can be used on publicity materials too. So more information on that to come from us soon. So thanks very much. I'm going to stop there and stop sharing the slides, and I'm going to hand back to Semra. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Helen. Philippa, if you are there, I'll put you on the screen now.
Yes, and apologies to everyone for rudely disappearing. And I understand that you could still hear me, but I couldn't see any of you, and my screen went a fuzzy colour. I'm here in the south of France and we're desperate for rain and we've had thunderstorms. So I'm pleased on one side, but sorry that it's interfered with talking to you. I'd just like to start by reiterating the thanks that Helen has given. In terms of the UK universities, we are really grateful for your support. And we really do see it as a partnership in recruitment. And so this framework that I'm going to talk about now, we have fed back a little bit to you is really to demonstrate the value of that partnership, and we see it all as going forward together. So I'm going to try and share my screen again and hope that you can hear me this time while I'm sharing my screen. And let me know if we can hear me still. Can you hear me still?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so there was a period where the UK government actually was interested in looking at recruitment practices and within that, what agents' role was in it. And they were concerned about some of the process. And we wanted to help their understanding of the role of agents and how important counsellors and agents are, and to understand your views, very importantly, and those of students alongside what universities thought of the process. And we spoke to a lot of agents, lots of students, and all UK universities. And out of that, we wanted to create a framework for use in partnership with you to ensure quality. And the key findings coming out of this research was there needed to be a more unified communication and information sharing. And you've already heard from Helen and Chris that there is now a move to create a hub. And that won't just be so that the British Council can communicate with you, but that so UKVI, Home Office, Department for Education from the UK can also let you know things. But importantly, we want that to be a two-way process, and we want to hear back from you about trends you're seeing in particular regions. That has been invaluable during the COVID process, and so we want to keep that sharing of information going. It also said that there should be guidelines around quality, but these shouldn't be too prescriptive, and so that it was still easy to do business with the UK. And this whole piece around accessible training, affordable and applicable for experienced counsellors, which you'll have seen from the training piece, has been taken on board. So we wanted to do several things coming out of this research from these recommendations. And during the research, we looked at the legal structure, and we've come up with some things that were barriers within that, and we've changed some of the ways that we're looking at that. We wanted to look at student satisfaction and how students could actually register whether they were happy or not, and actually make students a little bit more savvy in when they were looking at an agent and looking at what they were meant to be expecting. And so we're producing a student guide so that they can look at what they should be thinking about when they engage with the student engages with an agent. This centralised communication and training scheme, more transparency around commissions. So although we don't want to go into all the details, and although students were aware that commission was being paid, they weren't entirely sure of that process, and we wanted to make sure that that was clear. Information sharing between the Home Office and universities. So we've not just set our discussions with universities, we've spoken to English language providers, we've spoken to further education, so that this will be a sector response. And we've also spoken to government stakeholders, so the Home Office, the Department for Education, Department for Industry and Trade, to make sure the framework is fit for everybody. And we're then looking at a national code and the introduction of a national code of ethical practice, and also a best practice guide. And I'm going to come on and talk a little bit about those as well. So you told us that you wanted a clear set of standards to ensure that there was quality. And the majority of agents out there, we know you're doing a brilliant job. So we wanted to share best practice and to eradicate the small amount of poor practice. So what will the national code be able to help you with? As education agents, it's going to help you demonstrate that your practice is the highest standard. UK institutions, and that's all sectors, as I just said, not just HE, to drive best practice amongst their education partners. So that may mean that you see some of this code reflected within contracts with you from further education and higher education. And international students, parents and guardians can be confident to use contracted education agents because they know that you are adhering to this code. Going back to the government stakeholders, they are really pleased that we have this code and we're introducing it, and they would see that as a mark of a good agent using this code. So the National Code of Ethical Practice has 5 areas. It looks at organisational behaviour, goes back to those ethical ways of doing business, looks about how you set objectives around advice and guidance, and that you make sure that you're not biased in one way or another or pushing students in a certain way, that the student is leading the choice and that it's student-centred practice, and then looks at organisational competence. And these 5 areas are going to be really important to help you. A lot of this you're doing already. So in the actual code, it's giving you examples of expected practice, and then it suggests what evidence might look like. So you'll see here, and although it might be a little bit small, it's talking about if all staff understand the legislation and regulations leading to recruiting students. And then it gives you some examples of what to look for to evidence that your staff understand all those things. And then it comes on to desirable practice. So this is like going 110%. To really show that you've got a high standard in terms of your practice. And again, here's some examples of what we might want to see and how you might evidence that. So the code isn't just a literal document that isn't interactive. It's also looking at showing you what we expect and also suggesting the evidence. So at the moment, institutions are embedding these compliance with the national code into their contracts. There's going to be a phased approach as contracts need renewing. So there could be an 18-month time frame before all contracts are actually showing this code within them. And a new module is being created within the British Council Education Training to look at this code in more detail. And it's probably likely to be a new requirement in most education agent contracts. And we will be telling students what they should look out for and check when they're selecting their education agents. The good practice guide for providers using education agents. I'm going to hand over to Chris to talk through what we were looking for, what came out of it, and what we've been doing.
Thank you, Philippa. Can everybody hear me? Good, we made a successful handover, Philippa, well done. So just to let you know a little bit more about the Good Practice Guide, which has been developed as part of the Agent Quality Framework. So Philippa was just talking to you about the Code of Ethical Practice that was designed to maintain high standards among education agents. The Good Practice Guide is sort of the other side of the coin. That's designed to do the same for education providers, to make sure that best practice is promoted and adhered to as much as possible. I think it's really important just to say again that a lot of this research, all of these developments has come off the back of feedback across the sector. So that means from agents and counsellors, and also from education institutions, and also from international students. So we spent a lot of time with focus groups and gathering feedback from many different parts of the sector that have all fed into these recommendations. So for example, as you can see on this slide here, this is some of the things that you as education agents and counsellors told us that you wanted good institutional practice to look like. So there was a lot of common themes, a lot of feedback around how you would value more collaborative planning and expectation setting. So working together in partnership with your institutions to plan and to set your goals and targets. We heard a lot about how you would like to see different types of performance metrics looked at rather than just pure application numbers, enrolment numbers, actually a wider appreciation that different agencies, different counsellors bring different types of value to these kind of relationships. So looking more about risk, looking more about student experience, looking more about potentially, you know, market intelligence and different types of metrics away from pure enrolment numbers. You said that you would like students to have a clear pathway for providing feedback on their experiences, both with you as an agent and with their institutions. You were very keen that education providers published lists and contact details of all of their education agents, and I know lots already do this, but I think it would be fair to say that this isn't 100% adhered to across the sector, and often the information isn't completely up to date. And as Philippa mentioned earlier on, students wanted a little more clarity around the commercial relationship between an agency and an institution. And I'll say it again to reiterate what Philippa said. This isn't about publishing numbers or details or percentages or commission scales or anything like that. It's purely about explaining the fact that this relationship does exist and why it exists. Thank you, Simran. So in terms of what the good practice guide looks like, here's a very quick snapshot of the different chapters involved. It was designed to try and follow the timeline of a relationship between an education agency and an institution. So we started looking at good practice on the strategy, so how can institutions best select and appoint their education agents, making sure that their partnerships are fit for purpose from the very beginning. What good practice looks like around training, making sure there's not lots of duplication of training from one institution to another. How do they plan? This came through really strongly from feedback from education agents. Collaborative planning, joint planning, making sure that you're setting achievable targets together rather than being prescriptive from one side to another. What kind of support do you need? You know, once the contract is signed and the targets have been set, are you as agents getting enough support, the right kind of support from your institutional partners? What kind of support should they be providing to you? How are you being assessed? How are you being reviewed? How are you being recognised as an ongoing process rather than just an end of year, end of cycle, how many students enrolled from which particular agency? You'd like to see a little bit more detailed, more ongoing review throughout the year. And we've covered, you know, for people sort of a little higher up in the hierarchy in the institutions around governance, how they might best staff, what kind of systems they might use, how they can best gather business intelligence. Thanks, Sarah. I mentioned before that a lot of the work we've done has come out of feedback from you as agents and counsellors and also from students. So throughout the Good Practice Guide, we've put hundreds of different agent perspectives and student perspectives and best practice tips across it. So we're trying to ensure that education institutions, when they're using this guide, are always putting the student perspective at the very centre of what they're doing, so that everything that they do focuses on what's actually best for the student as part of their international student journey. And we just try and sort of humanise it a bit by dropping these perspectives in and making sure that our education institutional partners are really aware of the feedback that's coming from your side and also the feedback that's coming from students. Thanks, Emma. So final slide from me on the Good Practice Guide. As with everything, it's all very well designing a guide, producing a guide, getting it published and stuff like that. But what are we doing to actually make sure that it's having an impact, that it's being implemented? Well, firstly, we've run a number of training workshops for education providers. So far, about 300 different university staff have completed our training program on how they can best use and implement the Good Practice Guide. It's published on the British Council website, it's published on the BUILA website. We ran a workshop at the latest BUILA conference. So we're doing everything we can to push this message out to the institutions that there's this amazing resource available for them and the best ways in which they can implement it. This is a sector-wide project. It's not just for universities and HE, so we're already working on a bigger project to push this out to schools, boarding schools, independent schools, FE colleges, to try and get EFL colleges, English language centres, to try and really spread the message right across the sector. What are the implications of what we're doing? Hopefully, one of the key things that will come out of it is increased collaborative practice. That's one of the key messages that came across from you, is that agents and institutions work much more as partners rather than like a supplier and a contractor. So really working together collaboratively to sort of jointly set expectations and work together as partners. And the other key thing that really came out that I'm really hopeful and confident that will come of it is much more clearer agreed metrics about how agents are being assessed by their institutional partners. So taking it away from pure enrolment figures and actually focusing on working with agents that provide real specific key strengths and actually assessing and rewarding agencies based on what those key strengths are. That is all from me, Semra, on the Good Practice Guide. Thank you.
I just wanted to add as a sort of closing point that we've been doing all this work with universities. We are now producing a good practice guide, which is using some of these points, but looking from your point of view. And so when the hub goes live in October and alongside the new training, there will also be this good practice guide for agents, which we will have developed for you. And then we'll talk about how we are running workshops on implementing that with you at that point. But just to let you know that that's coming, and also, as I mentioned before, that guide for students so that they can also look at what they need to be doing. But thank you again for all your help and support, and very happy to take questions when we're looking at that side. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippa. You will continue to appear on the screen, and I'm going through the questions depending on the panelist member who will answer. I will put them on the screen. So first question is, they would like to receive information on the agents training, especially for their new consultants on visa process. It is better to register with our agent network, and I'll post you the link here for you. So this will be the communication. This will be used as a communication channel to reach you. Anything that we share on behalf of the sector. All agents can register here. Let's move to the next question. Please tell me how we can register for the free training for October, or will you be sending the details by email? If you registered for this webinar, you'll receive, but I also shared the link where we get the registrations or pre-registrations for the training. Either way would work. We'll reach you. I think the question is like we were talking about again training. Does this apply to all employees of an agency? Yes. Please encourage all your staff to sign up for this training when it's launched. Will this cancel out our previous BC training by Education UK? Well, the previous training was valid for 2 years. You need to renew your certificate every 2 years. But with this training, I think, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. Will agents be invited to retake the agents every 2 years, or is there a kind of plan? Or
no, so there's no requirement for you to recertify, so you don't need to go back and obviously do the same training again. That's one thing. One piece of feedback that we took from the sector and said, yeah, that's very relevant. What agents will need to do is show some way of being continually engaged with the training, but it won't be a requirement to retake the training every 2 years, no.
Okay. Is the certification assigned to the individual or the agency? Will each employee need to certify? Do you want to answer? I know the answer, but do you want to answer while you are on the screen?
Yes, sure. So no, it will be the certification will be linked to the individual. Once you've completed the training, you'll appear on the database. That database will have obviously your details, and you can choose how much or how little you want to publish. And it will also include the details of the agency who you are working for. And if that changes, then that updates and the certification moves with you as an individual.
there is a long question. I'm trying to understand if it is for BUILA or UKVI. The question is, I would like to understand if British Council, in collaboration with universities, plans to diversify the cost issuing procedures for European students. I think this is for you, Philippa. If British Council, in collaboration with universities, plans to diversify the cost issuing procedures for European students, as an EU agent dealing with Italian students who have received a conditional offer from UK universities, we are managing serious difficulties in managing the registration process of students, big delays from universities in responding to students who sent documents confirming conditions, confirming documents, and communicating with it back in time to proceed with the registration. The question actually goes on, but is there anything that...
Yes, let me just come in. I mean, yeah. Obviously, we can't control individual university response rates, but if you're seeing a trend across a number and there seems to be an issue, we'd really like to understand that more. And if you want to, through SEMRA, get in touch with us, then we can have a look. If it's a continuing problem, we have regional groups, and we have a European one where we have university staff from all the universities who deal with European recruitment. So we can look at that and see what the issue is and what we can do about it. But I guess my first plea is to understand whether it's a particular university or it's a number of universities, and then we can look. If there is a trend and there's an issue, then we're really happy to look at that. And Helen is involved in these regional groups, and so we can together examine that. But please, can you give us more details? In fact, we've got a group coming up fairly soon, so I think this is something that we could take on board.
Thank you, Philippa. Well, I sent you the joining links to all participants, so you can send your questions to that email address, so we can share with BUILA and get an answer for you. One question, there's one question. It is too difficult for new agencies in Turkey to set up partnership with a UK university, except for very few number of agencies, and this is discouraging. Do you have any advice on this issue? I'm aware that some universities don't prefer to expand their, agreements with agencies. Philippa, do you have any, advice on this, like the agents who established their business recently?
Each individual university has a different approach and policy, and some, in fact, a couple of universities don't have agents at all, and so we can't really control that or do anything about that. It's their individual needs. I think what I would advise is to be as equipped as possible, and we've talked about the training and we've talked about the code to sort of show that you are knowledgeable and that you have an understanding of what is required. But it is really down to some universities don't actually recruit in certain markets, so there isn't a lot of point in they're not going to be taking on agents in that area. So it isn't a blanket thing, it is a case-by-case university conversation, I'm afraid. But I think if you can show that you are geared up, that when they are ready to do that and have that relationship, then that is helpful. But some don't actually recruit in certain markets.
Thank you, Philippa. Will this presentation be available to see later or a link via email? Yes, sure. Philippa, are you happy to share your slides with the wider audience? Okay, we'll do the same as British Council, so it's not a problem. There's one question about study permits. We'll do that. Let's do that in the second part. And we have other questions coming in, I see. A long question. Let me see. There is actually one question about a school. One of the agents getting an issue on refund. I already advised on that privately. Please take that, advice. I think that will be helpful to contact English UK to deal with the problem. Have you decided how you will check that agents are adhering to your code of practice?
Do you want me to answer that one, Sarah?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, the short answer is that we don't. As we sort of mentioned earlier on, this isn't prescriptive, so we're not telling people what to do. That will come between the relationship between the institution and the agent. So I think, as Philippa mentioned earlier on, some institutions may require that a certain number of agents and counsellors have completed the training, and that might be part of their contract. Other institutions might have a more flexible approach, and a lot of them will be done on a case-by-case basis, depending on the length and the status of their relationship with particular agencies. So BUILA and the British Council won't, I don't want to speak on behalf of the British Council, Helen, but stop me if I'm wrong, won't be kind of looking at who is completing the training and checking up. That's going to be for a conversation between you and your institutional partners.
But with the code and the training, I think there is an increased awareness now with the universities, and that they will be looking to monitor that within their contracting process. And I think it's fair to flag up to you that we are now in discussions about looking at how this might be sort of more of an accreditation, and therefore there might be a third agency that would come in and actually look at how people are adhering to that. But that hasn't happened at the moment. It will be your individual university partner that will be looking to see that you are doing this within their contract with you.
Thank you. There is a question about the training length of training and the dates. Dates are flexible whenever you like. The training is there. You can take any time you like. In terms of length, Chris, can you please advise how long the training takes? Again, it really depends on the knowledge of the agents, but let's say for a new starter, how long the training will take?
It's very hard to say, Sam, because people sort of read and learn at different times. I think the key message here is it's 100% online. It's 100% flexible. There is no start and end date, and you can move around the training at your own will. So, you can just take a small block. So if you're on the bus home, you've got half an hour, you can do half an hour of your training, save your progress, do another half an hour another time. So it's completely flexible.
Thank you. The dates of the training, it will be launched early October. We'll alert you when it's launched. I can't give you the exact dates at the moment. Would BC consider a separate category of agents to cover those organizations with the policy of not entering into agency agreements with higher education partners? We do this to our cost in order to avoid conflict of interest. Interesting question. To be honest, I am not in a position to answer this at the moment. Maybe we can get back to you on this later, if you don't mind. Another interesting question. I have some students in Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus who are from Africa. Would applying from Northern Cyprus affect their application? Do you mean applying to universities or visas? That's two different, these are two different questions. Could you please clarify? More questions are coming in. Well, we are an agency based in France, and we've had the feeling that the requests to issue Ucas are changing from one university to another. Yes, Philippa has already mentioned that, which makes it sometimes hard to help students out. Is there a place where we can have list of documents, deadlines to get the Ucas? Well, Philippa already mentioned about that. Philippa, you are on the screen now. I think it really depends on the individual institutions, right?
Yes, it does. Yeah, it does. There isn't sort of because they are independent organisations, we just represent them and we try to help support, but they make their own decisions, so it is really down to them. But if there's common issues like we mentioned around the sort of the CAS that people are seeing right across the board, lots of agents are seeing, and with lots of different universities, then we can look at those sorts of things. So if there are particular issues that keep coming up, then we'd be very happy to hear about those.
Philippa, that's for you. Another question: is there any code of ethical practice for educational institutions? Because we are, as the agencies, are absolutely not safe when making payments and not getting the refunds. We have several examples of not well ethical behavior of educators.
So part of the good practice guide and the good practice training that Chris has been involved in has been trying to look at sharing the best practices from universities with other ones. And I know that sort of relationship with the finance department within the institution was something that did come up, didn't it, Chris, as a sort of, we know that sometimes there are issues here, and so that's something that we need to rectify. So we have been sharing the best practice of how they should do that. And again, we're looking at them now internally trying to implement some of those things. So again, if there's sort of, again, quite a few examples of these, then we could feed that back to the universities. But it would be best if you went back and said, look, there is good practice around this. You can go back to the good practice guide, and there are ways that you can speed some of these things up. But it's mainly, I think, due to relationships within the university, and it is that talking between departments, because a university isn't just this one department that you might deal with on recruitment. Is lots and lots of different departments that actually have to communicate, and it's back to good communication. I don't know, Chris, whether you wanted to add anything.
Only thing I was going to add, Philippa, is you mentioned earlier on about the project which is currently in planning to produce like an agent-facing version of the Good Practice Guide. These are exactly the kind of things that would come out of that guide for you. So there would be advice on what is the best practice amongst institutions on the, sort of these financial sides of things, and advice on the best way for you to approach these kind of issues. So that's something that Philippa's absolutely right. It's an individual situation, it's communication between you and your partner, but these are the kind of things that we would be looking to help you with as part of the new agent-facing Good Practice Guide, which is currently underway.
Thank you. Chris, maybe we can, comment on this question, that the one is coming up. Is it going to be a general rule in place that only the certified agents can refer students to English schools? My understanding is not. I mean, there's no kind of restriction to stop agents who haven't done the training. This is just to, in a way to increase your knowledge about UK education, because you are the, you are the ones who are in front of students, dealing with students. We want to make sure that your knowledge is, up to date. Anything you would like to add, Chris?
No, you're absolutely right. The only thing to add is sort of, just sort of, reiterating what Philippa said earlier on. There may become a time when individual institutions require that from you as an agency. But again, that is a relationship that you would have, that contract, that relationship, that agreement between agency and institution. We're not going to put out a blanket, everybody has to do this. But that's not to say that the educational partners you have may not require it.
Thank you. Another question, a lot of questions, and I don't think we will finish them, but what we can do is among us, we can answer those questions and share the answers with you later on. We'll do our best to, answer a few questions in 5 minutes. Does British Council provide references to UK institutions about agencies? I'm afraid we don't. No. The short answer is no. When will the system open to access the training? October. I don't know the date yet, but we'll announce it as soon as we find the details. There are some questions about costs. Well, let's answer them, you know, by email. Some visa questions. I'm just reading, sorry. Maybe, yeah, let me read out this. I'm very encouraged to hear that, the suggestion regarding universities assessing agents on matrices other than numbers and enrollment targets. We work with very difficult markets and conversion can be very tricky for a variety of reasons. It is disheartening to work hard on applications for a partner supporting students through many barriers only to have the contract cancelled due to low conversion through external factors unrelated to our efforts. Sometimes we feel it is a thankless task. I think that's, sorry, it's just a comment. Philippa, if you want to, you know, comment on that, but otherwise, there are a few more questions, but as I said, around 20 I see. I'm sorry we can't do all of them at the moment, but we'll definitely get back to you with an answer afterwards. About the last, you know, comment, if you want to, you know, add anything, Philippa, you are more than welcome to.
Okay, I just think quite a lot of those around visas and quite specific questions around visas and things, and probably not things that we can answer. But in terms of I see there's one around the certificate for the agency rather than the consultants. This was actually replying to feedback which said that was a problem because of the high turnover in staff, and therefore that's why we're following the consultant rather than the agency, because of the turnover in staff. So that's why that was done, just to answer that one. But if there are specific questions that you want to come back to us on, then we'd be really, we'll try our best to answer them. And thank you again for having us today, Semra.
Yes, thank you for joining us today. Let's do the, I see, you know, now coming in like we have more than 20 questions. I'm really sorry we can't do all of them at the moment. So let's give 2 minutes break until we have UKVI and Rose, Ucas on board. And Philippa and Chris, Helen, thank you for joining us today. So we'll see you next time, hopefully, on other occasions in future. Okay? Have a great day.
Thank you, Semra. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. And we'll just wait for 2 minutes while we get ready for the next session. We'll carry on with Ucas and Rose. Let's start. I'm sure there will be counselors joining us shortly, so let's start in 2 minutes. You're on the screen now, and if you share your slides,
Can you see that okay?
yes.
Perfect. No problem.
Okay, welcome, Rose. We have Rose Sanger from Ucas to give us updates on applications for undergraduate programs in this academic year. Over to you, Rose. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Semra, and hello to all of you. Very lovely to be here today. As I said, yeah, my name's Ross Sanger and I'm a digital learning developer here at Ucas. Really happy to give this talk through, really looking at the application process, a little bit around research points where students can use our Ucas Hub to sort of narrow down their choices and where it is they want to go to university. I'm going to talk a little bit about the reference process a bit later on. And I'm also going to be looking at some stats shortly for 2022. My previous role in terms of Ucas was working in the Customer Experience Centre here. So what I'll try and do as I go through the presentation is put a few examples in from phone calls and things that I've heard over the years to kind of bring a few of the examples to life for you. So without further ado, as I mentioned, 2022, I thought would be a great place to start first of all and have a look at some key stats that I've pulled out for you to share. First of all, so there's been a 3% overall increase in international applications. So this has been up to 134,870 compared to 2021. So this is obviously looking back to last year's cycle, 2022. 134,870 overall. That's a 3% increase on what was 130,390 in 2021. We've also seen a 9% increase in non-EU applicants in the last cycle. That rose to 111,720 in 2022, which was 102,280 in 2021. So again, significant increase for non-EU applicants. The only area we have seen decrease was in the EU numbers, excluding the UK, and that was down by 18% decrease, which was 23,160 applicants applying in 2022. I've also just sort of pulled together the top 3 subjects there so that you can see them. So those were the most three that were applied to in the 2022 cycle. Business management leading the way at the top, followed by social sciences and subjects allied to medicine. So just a few stats there to kind of paint the picture for 2022, but obviously we are straight into the thick of 2023 now. The application itself has been live since May, so 17th of May, and that's pretty much the same every year. It won't be exactly the same date, but in May we look to make the application live for that cycle that's coming up. So ultimately the entire cycle may last for around 15 to 16 months, because obviously courses then start the following year in September, October time. Literally yesterday, as it says here, 6th of September. In fact, I know what's the date today. Yes, it is 7th, isn't it? Yeah, so yesterday, the 6th of September was the first day that we allowed applications to be sent through to us. So although we've made that significant time for research, it is just now that point now where you can send it straight through to us for universities and colleges to start receiving it. But that's not to worry. There's obviously plenty of time still to put together the application. Even for the 2 key deadlines that are coming up, and the first one being the 15th of October for medicine, veterinary medicine, science, dentistry and Oxford or Cambridge courses, and that's on the 15th of October. For everything else, the equal consideration deadline is the 25th of January. So still plenty of time to be thinking about making an application if a student isn't applying for that early deadline. So one thing at this point is just really to identify those students that are applying for 15th of October, making sure they've got the support, they're aware of how strict that deadline is, because obviously if you don't send it in an application by then, it's very unlikely to be looked at. These are equal consideration deadlines. If you get it in by the date that's set for the course they're applying to, they will definitely be considered for a decision. Now I've put on here as well the very last deadline that you can send an application to UCAS, which is technically the 30th of June with choices. So don't, I think this is more of a reassurance piece. As I said, students need to be aware that those on-time deadlines should be what they're working towards. But if for whatever reason a application is sent later, or a choice is added later before the 30th of June, it is possible that universities and colleges can still make a decision. So it's just a case of sort of checking that with them, because they would be classed as late at that point. And don't forget, in between all this, we have extra as a process later on, and clearing obviously over the summer where there are other ways of applying to choices. But we'll talk a bit more about that later on. This is just to really look at the cycle as a whole. So if I'm coming to UCAS now and want to make an application as a student, where would they need to go? We have the Ucas Hub, which we've put together now as a place, and we really recommend, students even lower than obviously in the year applying to university or college, year 9, for example, could even be using this as a place to gather research and understand what's available in obviously the university and college world. The hub basically is a personalization tool. So everything that person is entering that they like, that they want to study and what they're interested in, we're going to give them information specifically just on that. So if they tell us that they like media or maths or English, we'll give them information about those particular courses. Or if they tell us a part of the country that they want to study in, we can tell them about open days and events and information about that particular area. So all the while we're making sure their journey to university and college is as seamless and easy as possible with the relevant information that they need. So that's really the main purpose of the hub. And obviously alongside those research tools, that's obviously where you make your application. And it's really as simple as top left-hand tile, as we sort of call them on the screen. It will say your application and literally start to get going with it. I've kind of highlighted a few things relevant to know from the off with the application. We've talked about the 15th of October. Significantly, with medicine, science, veterinary, dentistry courses, you can only apply to 4 choices. So that's something agreed by all universities and colleges, and it does mean that those 4 choices are for the early deadline. But as we allow 5 on all applications, the 5th choice could be for something similar, but obviously not for that early deadline. So for medicine, that could be for biomedical science, for example. We know that Oxford and Cambridge is going to be an option that many students will be looking at. So that you're aware, you can't apply to both Oxford and Cambridge. As much as students may want to, it has to be one or the other on the application as part of that early deadline. There is also a fee for the application. So it's £22.50 for one choice and £27 for multiple choices. And be aware of that multiple choice fee. It does mean that if anybody was to be unsuccessful, they can obviously use extra and clearing. Again, we'll talk about them in a little while, which are other opportunities to apply to universities and colleges after the decisions of the first 5 choices. We know these are equal consideration deadlines that I've expressed earlier. They are really important to be met because I can't sit here and guarantee that anyone will get a decision if they do send their application after those deadlines. Hopefully there will be some circumstances where people may, but that's down to the university or college themselves. So it's best not to promote pinning hopes on that and making sure, again, being time efficient, making sure that deadlines are set perhaps internally with advisors, whoever's completing references, to make everything done in time for those deadlines. And last but not least, I've just kind of thrown this bullet point in to highlight a question that I've seen for many a year in our experience centre, where there is this concern about applying to 5 different universities. Will they see where else I'm applying to? And it's almost referred to as this invisibility cloak, and that is actually the case. So where you're applying to doesn't see what you're applying to until the decisions have been made. So when somebody's had all their decisions of either offers or if they have been unsuccessful, when a student actually applies to their offers, it's only at that point where another university can see where else you've applied to and obviously where you've accepted onto the application. So it's invisibility when the decisions are being made, if that makes sense. Now, a significant part of making an application through the hub is obviously a student wanting to link to a school, college or centre. So they've obviously got that support, looking over the application and all the other things that come with that. If they're given the buzzword by a UCAS registered centre, which could be a school, college or centre, they would need to enter that on that first section when they go into clicking to start an application on the hub. So you'd obviously answer this as yes, this question you can see, enter the buzzword, which is obviously that sort of unique password or code that's been set up by the school, college or centre. And by doing so, it puts them through into their advisor portal area. So that student will pop up and they are able to accept them onto their system. The main reason for doing this more than anything is obviously that the school, college or centre advisor can complete a reference for the application. They can check over the the spelling, the grammar, for example, and just support as they're going through the application process, thinking about whether qualifications have been entered correctly, obviously entering predicted grades. So it's really significant if that's something that's being set up. We're going to talk a bit more about the reference processes later on, but the buzzword that's entered needs to be put in at this point when they're first registering with their application and starting to fill it in so that they can link to that centre. Significantly, obviously, the last thing to do is if they're linking to a centre, they're the ones that are in charge of making sure that the application gets sent off in time before those deadlines, because they will be in charge of doing that. Okay. I've kind of wanted to show an overview of what a student would do in terms of coming to UCAS and ultimately getting into their university or college. I've kind of given a bit of a timeline here. So I talked about it a bit already, but the Ucas Hub is the place where even now it would be important to go to and complete that thorough research on where it is that a student would want to go. And then ultimately from then go into that start application tile and start filling in the application itself. Once all the sections of the application are completed, they can then send the application to their school or college if they're linked via the buzzword we talked about a minute ago. And that teacher advisor that has access to the advisor portal and the student's details can check through the qualifications, the statement, make sure there's no errors on there or anything written incorrectly, complete a reference and add predicted grades. Then once all of that is done, they can send the application through to us at UCAS. And then what we do on behalf of the student is send the application to the university and college so that they can make their decision on the application received. So that's the timeline, and that's kind of the way they would go for UCAS and their journey to university or college. So I've got a couple of screenshots now of what this looks like in the hub when they click that start your application tile. So really that's sort of, again, the sort of timeline that they go from first registering to make their hub account through their own email address and their own password, which they come back to each time. And obviously, if they ever come back to UCAS, we will also have their details so that if they want to reapply or go on to other options, that profile is their own area and they can use that to build it up from the information that they want. It's a personalized area, the hub, so they can make sure that they are just giving us as much information about them so that we can help them and personalize it to what they need to know. The application here has obviously got a number of different sections that need to be completed, and that's all sort of spread out into different areas. And there's almost like little tiles, or a bit like looking at apps on a phone, for example. They'll start off by kind of putting more information on top of what they did for the registration. So that's personal details, contact information, nationality information as well, how they're going to fund the course. So these are things that university and colleges want to know initially. So that information is put in there about themselves. And then there's other things that are on top at the bottom here. In fact, the next screenshot will show it in a bit more detail of all the different areas that need to be completed. So really bullet pointing, these are all the things that need to be done before the application can be sent off. And I like this screenshot because you can see some of these tiles that have got colours underneath them. So where it's a white and then blue text start the section, that means that somebody hasn't started it at all. So they'll know what they need to come back and do each time. Obviously, if the section is completed, they have that highlighted with a tick. That may mean that there's something that you still need to go back and update because the section's not completed. If it's got a green section on it, that means that it's completely done. Everything in the section's completed. That's almost done, and they can move on. Where it's kind of blue and in progress, there's still something in there that needs to be done before it turns green to be completed. Because obviously they can save it and come back to it later on. The other areas to be aware of that will take a bit of time for a student to complete is the education section. So it's really important to advise students to start thinking about where's my qualification certificates and transcripts from perhaps the last few years, maybe level 2 qualifications, because they'll need that to hand that information. Not only are they putting down the pending qualifications that they're doing currently, but they also need to have a full education history. So that includes the qualifications that they would have done obviously previously before continuing to where they are now. They can also enter paid employment. So that would be the last 5 places of paid employment they'd add into their application with those details. And obviously almost the biggest area that needs a lot of time over is the personal statement. Now, just to touch upon that briefly, there is a brilliant tool in the Hub that has is a personal statement builder. So if anybody is starting to think about completing a personal statement, again, this is why it's really important to talk to students about getting their Hub account ready, because they can start to get the advice and help they need through that, as well as I said, starting to think about their personal statement, because that builder asks questions of themselves and they can jot down that information to start putting it together. Then obviously on top of this, there's the add choice option that they can add their 5 choices as well. Just want to show a few things that the Hub has, and I've really sort of shown this as much as possible and as clearly as possible. If somebody's coming to the Hub for the first time, above that application option to start and get cracking on it is a to-do list. And I strongly recommend almost asking students to go through this particular list before heading straight in to make their application. These are the sort of questions and things that are really important to be thinking about, because obviously as you're starting to tailor the application to a particular subject, for example, are they completely clear on where they're wanting to apply and what subject they want to do? So that's why it's important to look at what subjects do you like, where do you want to study? So using some of the tools we have available to look at places around the country, obviously UK being very diverse in terms of so many different places, whether it's by the coast or history areas, maybe in a city or straight in the heart of London, for example. They're all things that are really important to think about. And that's what this sort of checklist does. They can access that just above the application before starting it. So really important to be aware of that. And I just literally mentioned about getting to know the UK and where universities and colleges are. Well, they can actually, as a student, favourite the options they've been looking at, and it's done in the same way as if you're adding 5 choices on the application. So they can actually put a heart or the courses and universities they're looking at, and that'll go into the favourite area and show them the information of where those universities and colleges are on the map as well, along with the relevant information that goes with them. So it's really housing everything together and building their Hub with the things that they want to know about and where they want to go. But it's also really important to help students on where you might be coming to UCAS for the first time as a student and be thinking, I don't know what I want to do, I don't know where I want to go. And there's lots of tools to support that. The Explore Your Future, we sort of call them widgets or tiles as the hubs, and select the one you want to go to. Explore Your Future is almost a bit like the sort of Netflix, Amazon Prime, Spotify browsing method of just going through and having a look at lots of different subjects, so chemistry or agriculture or whatever it is, and looking at that in context to university or college, because they may be studying that sort of a qualification in that particular area, and they can get an idea as a student what it would be like to study at university or college doing that particular subject. So really good way of researching and getting ideas of where it is and what they may want to do at university or college. So I just want to now spend a bit of time before we finish on the reference section, because I think it's really good to be quite clear on the 2 different routes with references. Now, you may come across many students who will be linking to a registered centre, as we spoke about earlier, with the buzzwords. And obviously by doing so, when that is entered, they would have access to the application in its entirety, see all the information, be able to complete a reference. The predicted grade as well can be added, which I've entered at the bottom. It just gives them full access to see everything and support the student. And the way it works is they don't see the reference section in the Hub. So when they're linked up, the registered centre has access to that particular student's information, and they can complete the reference when they're ready to do so in a box that's provided as part of the advisor portal. On the flip side, it's still possible for students to apply with an independent reference. That's where they would see the reference tile in the hub. So earlier, if you think back to where there was all the details and education, employment, statement, there'd be a tile that would say reference. And for independent applicants, where they haven't linked to a registered centre, they can enter details of a referee. So they can enter their name, address, phone number, and email address being the most significant part. Because what we do in the application when it's independent, they enter the details of the referee and they click an option to submit a reference request via email to them. That referee gets the email, they open the link that's provided and a special password for that referee, and they're going into an area to complete the reference for that particular student. Once they've done the reference and submitted it, the student gets an email to say that it's done, and then they are able to send their application through to UCAS. So it's more on their side in that situation that everything gets done and they're checking that the reference is done by their referee before it's sent. So independent via email, or obviously when they're linked to a centre. In both situations, it's still 4,000 characters or 47 lines as the maximum that a reference can be entered into. So it's an empty box. It really is best to be thinking about a word processing document where the information can be entered and obviously tailored, edited around, make sure it's within that limit before putting it into the box via the email or the area of the advisor portal where you enter the reference. Another reason for that is that if you just enter it straight into either, there is a security timeout. So if it was just typed in and the timeout obviously ends and you try to save, it would then lose the reference. So it's really important that it is saved somewhere. So that's really a good way of doing it, by putting it in the perhaps a word processing software first of all. I have touched upon it and I'll just say it one more time. Obviously, predicted grades can be entered, but it is really important that students have clearly entered their qualifications as pending in the education section, because that they will only get the option to enter predicted grades if they do that as a referee. So it needs to make sure that information is on there. Last but not least, just thinking forward to when an application's been submitted, a lot of things the students can do themselves in the hub now, so they are actually able to change their personal details, such as email, phone, postal address in the hub. Other significant changes like a name or date of birth change, we'd need documentation to do that at UCAS. So if there is a circumstance where one of those needs to be changed, if a student was able to go to our website and download the amendment form, they can fill in the information, attach the actual documentation, and then when we get it through to the team, we can update the application with the change. It just requires that documentation to be able to do that for name and date of birth, for example. We also know that there may be mistakes to qualifications, as it can happen. They can also be updated through our online amendment form. That can be done by advisors or students. And again, that's found through our UCAS website, and it can be accessed, filled in and sent to us so that we can update that if there were to be any errors at that point. The other thing with that is obviously to make sure that you've let the universities and colleges know, because they may have already looked at the application already. Now really to highlight the things that can't be changed, because this is quite important. Part of our verification team is to check personal statements against other statements. So where similarities are found, that will be flagged up to universities or colleges. So it's important that, well, we can't allow personal statements to be changed because of it. So it's important that obviously the correct personal statements added to the application. There's no guarantee later on that another statement could be sent directly to a university or college. So that's something that would have to be discussed with the university or college at that point. But yes, it can't be changed through the hub, basically. That's also the same for predicted grades and the reference. And that's really important for anybody completing a reference, because obviously later on, if they do apply through other processes, every time they apply, the reference would be obviously then incorrect on the application. So this is why it's really important to double check references if it's being done independently or through the advisor portal, that somebody casts another eye to make sure that it's the information's correct. And again, going back to my experience, I have seen people who have entered the wrong reference for a student on the application. And obviously when it's been sent through, that's a lot of admin time that would need to be resolved with up to 5 universities for that person, making sure they've got the right reference. So really good to put a check in place to make sure that the reference is checking grammar and the correct reference attached. Finally, extra and clearing, just to highlight, if a student is unsuccessful from their 5 choices, there are 2 processes where they can apply through their application, and this is great reassurance to be thinking about. They can use extra to add an extra choice on their application. Now that's an option if with their application they have been unsuccessful, for example, and they want to add a new choice. It's 1 at a time from February right through until July that they can do that. But some students may have had 5 offers and think, do you know what, I don't want to go to any of them. I want an opportunity to apply somewhere else. They could decline all their offers and actually go into extra that way. So it's essentially, if nobody is holding an offer or had all their decisions, they're able to add an extra choice come February, 1 at a time, basically. That then leads into clearing. And the difference, obviously, with clearing over the summer is they're applying with their results that they've got at that point, and obviously to the courses that are available, because decisions are being made, and it really depends on what will be there at that point, which we obviously won't know until July, August time. The difference, obviously, is they need to contact the university or college before adding the choice. So they're getting that confirmation. It's more of a live thing that's happening. Ringing them up, finding out if they can give the vacancy, and then they can add the choice if it's agreed over the phone. So great reassurance of other options during the cycle after those 5 choices that they may apply with. And that really at this point is me. So thank you very much all for listening. I hope that's helped, and that's UCAS for 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. We have some questions coming in, but we'll do them at the end. Now, I would like to put Shirin Nabi on the screen to deliver her presentation. Shirin, welcome, and it's over to you.
Thank you, Semra, and hi everybody. Thanks for sticking around. I know this has been a long webinar today, but I hope you found this all very useful. So I am the Regional Communications Manager at the Home Office for UK Visas and Immigration. Today I'm going to share an update in terms of where we are operationally, and also cover some of the other work that we have been doing over the summer to support you and to support students as well. So I'm just going to share my slides with you.
Sure. My internet is slow, so it's coming.
We can see that well. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Helen. So before we get started, I know quite a few of you are possibly familiar with the work that we do and the outreach, which we will talk about. So we have hosted a number of events that we will come on to. And if you will have seen some of those, you will be familiar with how I like to start these presentations, which is give you an overview of some figures. So in the past 12 months, so these figures were taken from around June time, so it hasn't covered the July and August peak period. We saw over 486,000 student visas issued. We expect this year it's going to be significantly higher, given we are in a much more promising and optimistic position. There is no red listing, less blended learning, so students are coming to the UK, which is fantastic. As I say, these figures are up until June, so we have seen so far a 74% increase, which is fantastic. And then in terms of more recent figures from the Europe and sort of wider Asia area, so all of the countries here that people are attending from, so from Turkey to the EU to wider Europe, etc., we have seen over 5,000 applications between the May and August period this year, which is fantastic. Now, in terms of where we are operationally, I'm just going to share a few updates with you. So the current service standard is 15 days for long-term students. This is the pre-COVID turnaround time, so things haven't changed in this respect. We've got a great team who are focusing on student visas. We've hired new staff over the course of the summer period to really make sure that we are ready. The visit visas and also short-term students who fit into this category are taking slightly longer, and that is the 7-week turnaround. And we know there have been questions about that recently. And by way of an update for next year, it is helpful just sort of for everyone to know that both long-term and short-term students will both be processed by the same team in the UK. So hopefully that will help to bring in the short-term student turnaround times more in line with the long-term students and to give all students the same good customer experience. We did reintroduce the priority and super priority visas on 12th of August. So these return to locations where they did exist previously. So priority offers a 5-day visa turnaround and super priority offers a next working visa. So given term is fast approaching, we are seeing the vast number of students now applying for these. So just kind of looking at figures from the end of last week, around 2/3 of applications coming in now globally for student visas are the priority visas, so the 5 working day turnaround time. Last week, we made over 49,000 decisions on student visas. And that does also factor in last Monday, which was a bank holiday in the UK as well. So there was reduced staffing. So that's, you know, we will continue to see this week and the coming weeks, those figures will likely increase. And a final update, just for you to share with your students for the future and this year's cohort, is that there is no requirement anymore to register with the police. So that just makes the process a little easier for students. So just in terms of a communications update, I thought it would be really helpful to go over some of the support that you may have seen over the past year and what to expect kind of going forwards in the future. So this year, we worked on a social media campaign that encouraged students to apply early. We worked with the British Council, the commercial provider, so TLS Contact for this part of the world, to make sure that everybody was promoting the same messages. It was really key for us to get across the message that we want students to apply early. And we were saying this from June, encouraging people to apply in July if they can before August. And we'd like to thank you as well, because we know that this message was cascaded to agents and you were also encouraging your students to apply or to start getting their documents ready. This year was the first time we had a campaign specific for Europe. So as you know, the process has changed in recent years because of Brexit, and it was really important for us that our European stakeholders were informed about the changes and they knew about the digital application process, which differs from the rest of the world. Now, some of the ways we did this is engaging with partners such as yourself. This year, we were pleased to hold our first European event for agents. So some of you may have come along to that. In fact, 136 of you did. And this focused on the EU, EEA and Switzerland demographic who go through the digital application process. We also held an event for students and we saw similar positive numbers. And we continued with the existing engagement that we offer. So I lead on the engagement in Turkey and Central Asia, and we've always found those events have gone down very well. This year we hosted an event with the British Council. The majority of the attendees were from Turkey, so thank you all for attending. And I'm pleased to say we also held our first in-person event for a select group of agents in Turkey. We hope we can continue to build on this, and as we are moving out of the COVID environment and as travel is continuing to open up, that means offering both virtual and in-person support where available. So the ongoing support, you've heard from colleagues today talking about the agent training. This is a really good opportunity for you all to upskill and to get accreditation. We're working with universities to make sure that they are more in the loop about what is going on, that there is more transparency particularly around the risks that we see for applications. We want to make sure that universities understand what we're looking for in applications, and then they will help to cascade this information to you. So overall, we will all work together to try and eliminate some of the risks we see, and also to make the process smoother for students. So we've spoken to universities about trying to issue CAS letters earlier. We're speaking to TB clinics where testing is happening to make sure people can book appointments. And we also have a regional communications manager who is essentially, in my role, but specifically for the Europe region. So my colleague Jackie will be coming on the line shortly to introduce herself. But just before then, I do want to go over some final reminders in terms of applications. If you have joined my presentations, you will have seen this previously. So it's really important when submitting an application that the English language ability is proven. So depending on where a student is applying from, they may be asked to provide this information up front, but it is something we could ask to see anyway. Generally, a university will be asking for a particular test or qualification. It could be IELTS as an example, it could be another test, and we will, generally speaking, be satisfied with those requirements. It's really important to mention any study gaps in your student's application. So if they've taken time out to work or to build a career, that's completely fine, but just explain why. It's really important to include all of the correct documents, so the CAS reference number, the proof of finances, proof of English, etc., potentially consent from a parent or guardian if the child is under 18. All of this information would need to be submitted at a TLS centre, or if you're applying via the digital process, that would need to be submitted on the ID Check app. And translations. It's really important that all documents submitted are authentically translated into English. We will also be able to see a student's travel history. So it's really important if they have applied for a visa elsewhere, so it could be in the UK or other parts of the world, that they do put this on their application. If we see something and then the student doesn't tell us about it, we wonder why, there's missing information. So it's really important they put that in. And here's a very quick run through of the application process if you are visiting a visa centre. So prepare your documents, go to your visa centre and book your appointment, submit your biometrics there, wait for your decision, and those are the documents that you need. For the EU students, we did design a social media campaign that covers the digital application process. So there have been videos, infographics, all of this information was promoted through the British Council, across your regions, across the embassy channels as well. So you can find all of those assets there if you wish to use them. But all of this information is on the gov.uk website. So thank you for listening. I hope you found that update of where we are now currently helpful, and I will hand over to my colleague Jackie to introduce herself to the region.
Hiya, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hiya, can you see me as well?
Not yet. I'll put you on the screen. Sorry.
Thank you. It's all right.
Something happened. I can't just. Yeah. You need to be. Your camera needs to be on. Okay, now
It is on.
you'll be on the screen.
All right, lovely.
Yes.
So hello
see.
everyone. Thank you. I'm Jackie O'Brien and I'm UKVI's communication lead for Europe, as Shireen just mentioned. So as she also mentioned, this is a relatively new role, developed in recognition of the fact that post-Brexit European nationals do have to apply for a visa to work and study in the UK. And we felt that developing proactive communications and clear guidance would help support people with that process. So all of our other regions worldwide had dedicated points of contact within UKVI, and we wanted to bring Europe in line with the rest of the world and give that similar communication support. So I've only been in the role for a few months, and my initial job has been to build a network of contacts, mostly so far with communications colleagues in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. I've also had some contact with British Council and Helen, though, which has been lovely. And my job so far has consisted, as Shireen has already covered, developing communications materials. So that can be anything from policy and operational changes, supporting visa campaigns such as the Student Visa Comms campaign. And this mostly takes the form of operational lines, Q&As to help our embassy colleagues answer any questions they get in, and social media posts. So everything I've done has had to have a slightly different focus to what we do with the rest of the world. It's had to have a very European focus because, as you know, the visa process for EU, EEA and Swiss nationals is different. And as Shireen alluded to, those with biometric passports can use the UK Immigration ID Check app to verify their identity rather than going to a VAC. So they're in the very fortunate position of being able to complete their whole application online if they're able to do so. So for my next steps, I want to continue building on working with teams in region to increase UKVI's reach in Europe, and in turn support them with any visa updates, answers to questions and press engagement. It would also be good to be able to extend working more closely with education partners such as yourselves and potentially increase the engagement side of my role. The only downside to it is that my role is only a percentage of my full-time job, so I can't offer the same support that Shireen can with her region, but I would like to increase the engagement side, and it is a balance that I'm still trying to very much work out, but I hope to at least speak with some of you in future. And if you do need to contact me, I'm sure we'll be able to provide my details. Thank you, that's me.
Thank you, Jackie. Then let's move on to question and answers. Maybe I don't know if Shireen would answer this. Maybe maybe Shireen, you may not have the answer. Let's try. Some universities that start to use the Ucas Shield system are insisting that students submit 60-day bank statements and prefer that the required amounts have been there for 60 days. They don't accept letters from the students' banks with the 28-day statement. Do you have any comment on this at all? Have you heard of this exercise?
So it's not something that I'm familiar with, and the requirements for a student visa are to show the funds for 28 days, so this should be okay. Mm-hmm. I would go by the information provided by the government. If you're hearing two different sets of information, go by what is live and on the website. So it's gov.uk/student visas.
Thank you. Is it possible to get a standard visitor visa for a 2-week English course with income statement from where only the client works for the government and doesn't have time for going and ordering a bank statement in bank?
So with a short-term visa, if you are looking to come, you will need to follow the requirements set out for visitor visas. They are not as defined as student visas because it will depend on the type of visit you're coming for. If it's tourism, a medical visit, as you say, a short-term course. But generally speaking, we would be looking to see that you can support yourself financially in the UK. So if funding is a requirement, you will need to do that. I will just remind you of the turnaround times for visit visas. They are 7 weeks currently. So, you know, if this is for next year, you know, you've obviously got plenty of time. But if you are considering this year and people are looking to come to the UK quickly, it is in their best interest to consider the priority visa service, which offers a 5-day turnaround.
Thank you. Rose, this question is for you. If you put your camera on, I'll put you on the screen, on the spot. Would you have number for Irish students? Irish applicants.
Yeah. Sure, you mean the international number to contact us?
Sorry?
Do you mean the international number to contact to you?
No. Do you have number? I think this actually came through at the beginning of the session, probably the number of Irish students. That's what I understand. But let's give a chance to the inquirer to revise his question. Okay. And another question. Can we have multiple intakes for all programs, UG, PG? The university requirements and delayed response is causing longer study gap for potential students.
Interesting question. So in terms of the cycle, that I guess is more feedback to be sent to universities and colleges, because they're the ones that manage their courses and when they're open to be applied to. There are some courses in the past, for nursing, for example, that are open January, February time, but the majority are from September, October. So yeah, in terms of UCAS, because we obviously do the admin and manage the course information that's given to us, it's very likely that's going to change, because we obviously work mainly through the same cycle in terms of how UCAS work with 350 universities and colleges around the UK. But it's not out of the question that some courses do start at different times. It's just not going to be as like a massive number. That sort of feedback, if there is some in particular, I would pass that on to them directly. If that's something that you're hearing, it's something more that they would be in charge of with their courses and when they start.
Thank you. Another question for you, and then we have a couple of questions. Actually, we have a lot of questions at the moment. They are coming in. This is for you. In the UCAS application, on the first page, there is a question: do you need a visa? So if the student has the pre-settled or settled status, they write no. Then when the reply comes from the university, they consider the student as an international fee payer. I understand they want the proof, but they can simply ask for the share code and not get involved in an endless time-consuming conversation. So I think there is it's a kind of feedback on the system. If you can improve the system to eliminate that conversation between two parts.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So that question is obviously asked of UCAS to our students at that point, whether it's required or not. But ultimately, the big question about whether a student is international or not is done via the university or college. That's kind of an indicator to them first off. But the universities and colleges will have their own forms and process that they run with students to find out that information. They're obviously the ones that as I say, class whether a student is international or not. So there is help text and information in terms of answering that question, but there isn't really, I think with that question, it's kind of, is there anything more we can add to it to make it more clear on whether they're going to be international or not, I believe is being asked. If I was to get that phone call myself, one of the places that we would highlight is Ucas. They could speak to. I'd have to try and find the number, but there are, or obviously to a university or college directly, where they can get advice on their circumstance. They can give the information. They kind of would tell them that up front. But we as UCAS, we probably couldn't determine that over the phone. And the application really is kind of like an indicator to them, and then they would find out the more information when the student comes through and has actually applied. So yeah, I don't think it's going to change too much in the application, but they, as I said, they do have individually all have different processes run with finding that information out.
Thank you. Shireen, the next question is for you. What is the current fee for an EU student to obtain a visa, and what is the cost of the annual health fee? I think there is no difference between EU or any other international students, but over to you.
That's exactly it. So part of the changes with the visa process mean that the fee and the application, what we are asking for, is the same for students globally. So it's £372 for a student visa, and the immigration health surcharge will depend on how long a student is coming for. If they are coming for under 6 months, then that is, you generally pay in a 6-month block. However, if you are coming for your full year, you would pay for a full year.
Okay, thank you. Another question about your getting hold of your telephone numbers. An agent asked the number on the website is given. He listed the numbers. They are not working. That's what I understand. Why is the telephone number for inquiries from outside the UK doesn't work? Basically, I can share the numbers they have later on, but maybe you can pass it on to your technical people to solve. I mean, check this situation, right?
Is that for UKVI or UCAS?
UKVI.
Yeah, that's fine. So what we can do is put details of the chat bar, put details in the chat bar of the UKVI contact centre. So there is an email and a phone number. I haven't been made aware of any problems with the phone line at the moment, so I would encourage you to just keep trying to get through, and if not, there is the alternative of using the email service as well.
That will be great. I already shared the comments. I publish it, so you will see the numbers there. In what conditions can students apply for priority and super priority visas?
So these are available for long-term students. The conditions would be the same as a normal student visa. The offering here is that you are paying more money and in return you are receiving a faster visa service. So the best thing to do is to look on the TLS contact website to determine if this service is available for those of you who are visiting a visa centre to submit your biometrics. Jackie, are you able to confirm, is this offering available on the app for EU students, or is it not the case?
PV is, so the 5-day turnaround is available for students using the UK Immigration ID Check app, but SPV isn't at the moment. That's the super priority. 1-day turnaround isn't available, but the other one is, so yeah.
Okay, let me see. Ross, I have a few questions for you. Again, sure. How could we become an agent recruiting students through UCAS?
Good question. I know the process has changed recently. Probably best to contact through our customer success team. I can give the phone number actually if that would help, or the through the email address. So if the international number would be +44 330 333 0239. Or sorry, do you want to jot that down? I can put it in the chat if not. That's fine.
Yes, that would be great. That was
sure.
Yeah,
and then there is an email address as well. But yeah, probably best to come through to the team and they can definitely support that. Yeah, no problem. We can certainly look into how we can get that set up. Not an issue at all.
We have over 40 questions, so let's see, what we can, how we can do better. Please advise an email address where we can ask to get our agency's password and codes for UCAS application. Maybe the email that you write, they can, use the same email address, right?
Yes, yeah. Just go through that again. Just to get access to, did you say to an area? Yeah, to like the advisor area of the website, I think was mentioned. Yeah, I mean there are ways that can be self-served, but yeah, absolutely. If you need to contact us, I'll put the details in the chat now. Just find that. Second.
Okay, while you do that, I put sharing on the screen. Shirin, is there any way of contacting the local TLS? We have tried, but it seems that we can only go in person to the local TLS center. I think that's how it works, but yes, I'm not sure why they want to contact the global team.
Yeah, so with TLS, I would go onto the website and you can find the relevant contact details there. If there isn't a phone number, then they may just be you know, dealing with people in the visa centre. But what I would say is only go there if you have an appointment. You shouldn't really be kind of going there to ask any questions. If there is something you would like to track in terms of your student's application, TLS Contact do have an application tracker that students can use. And if it's been over 15 days and they are waiting on a decision, they may want to contact the UKVI contact centre. But up until it's been 15 days, I'd recommend just waiting, because most of the visas, you know, a significant number are being processed within 15 working days. It's only if there are, you know, we're waiting on further information or there's potentially a complication that it could take longer.
Thank you. Is it translation can be done by individuals rather than translator agencies?
No, so they will need to be official translated documents.
Okay. Will it be possible at some point to have one student visa which would cover pre-sessional English plus a full degree program, bachelor or master? This would be easier for students in the way that they won't need to go back to their home country to get the student visa.
No,
One
definitely,
visa,
that is some good feedback to take on board. Thank you.
but it is not possible, right?
Not at the moment, no. But what I would say is if people are already in the UK, look online and read about your specific circumstances. There may be the option to apply while you are still in the UK for your student visa rather than having to return to your home country.
Thank you. Is it possible for the EU students to access the UK after they apply for their student visa but still waiting to get it?
So this would largely depend on what status they're holding. If they are still waiting for their visa, as we say, it only takes 3 weeks. So, you know, hopefully that is long enough for them to sort of hold on and then they can come to the UK.
Thank you. Any chance to TOEFL test will be recognized for UKVI?
So I'm unable to confirm any future plans about testing, but as and when new tests are approved by UKVI, this will all be on the government website. So I would say keep checking there for any updates.
Thank you. I think we answered that. If a EU student doesn't get the visa in time, can he enter the UK as a tourist and receive the visa after entering the UK? I think you answered this similar. No?
So students should be coming on a student visa and they should not be entering the UK as a tourist.
Some repetitive questions. Okay, interesting question. Maybe you can help. A student didn't disclose refusal from over 10 years ago because he thought it was more than 10 years ago and not relevant. So he was refused earlier this year. He was written a mitigation statement explaining the reasons for non-disclosure. But do you think with the 2 refusals on this history, he would now be unlikely to get a visa?
So we assess all applications on an individual basis. If people's circumstances have changed between their applications, you know, we will do a full review. We will, of course, look to see if visas have been refused previously. But as I say, we are looking at the most current up-to-date information. So no, I wouldn't say that because they've had a refusal previously, they will definitely have a refusal this time.
I'm not sure you or maybe Helen answered this. The beginning of the question is missing, but is there any kind of arrangement in place? NHS surcharge could be refunded for European students at some point. Maybe I don't know the beginning of the story, but is there a kind of refund for NHS surcharge? Do you know?
There are details. Sorry, go on, Shireen.
No, go on, Jackie. That's
I think
fine.
I think I was going to say the same as you were just going to say. There is information around NHS refunds. And all the sort of relevant eligibility for it on gov.uk. So I think Shireen was just going to say she was going to drop that into the bar. Is that right, Shireen?
That's exactly it. So what
Yeah.
I'll do is I will just share a link with colleagues, and that covers immigration health surcharge guidance for EU and Swiss students. So if that does apply to some people, they can read about, you know, potential reimbursements and how it works in terms of planning to study in the UK as well.
Let's do one question and then let's finish. I still have around 40 questions on the screen, but I'm really, conscious of time. We already now, it's 2 o'clock in UK time, and I get comments about being selective on questions. But because of the number of questions, I could do my best. Sorry about that, but we'll definitely make sure that you'll get an answer for all your questions by email. Maybe last question for Rose, and then we close the session. Rose, if you put your camera on, I'll put you on the spot again.
Hi.
Thank you. I can't see. My internet is being funny. Sorry.
Okay.
What fee code should EU students now put on the Ucas form? It used to be O2 and EU, something like that. I don't know what it means, but yeah.
Yeah, for paying by finance. Yeah, EU team, I think, was one of the selections through the student finance option. O1 is for private finance. So if it's either of those, would be the option. I think that's what's being referred to. For because if you select O2, there's an option through the arrangements that you can select EU team as a selection. So I think that's what they mean. Yeah, still the same.
Okay, thank you. Well, then we have come to the end of our session. We thank all our panelists for the informative presentations, and thank you who joined us to watch this today. I'm really sorry we were unable to answer all of the questions. We hope that you found this interesting and useful. We'd love to have your feedback on the event. We'll send you a short questionnaire to share your experience with us later today. And we wish you all a great day and see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.